You're listening to Concentrates with Dr. T, a podcast discussing cannabis science, news, and hot topics. I'm going to move on now to this article on Weed Maps called A Conversation on What It Means to be LGBTQ+ in the Cannabis Industry. And again, go ahead and find this article and read it. It gives the perspectives of several LGBTQ members in the cannabis industry. But instead of going through their experiences, I'm right now going to use this as a springboard to kind of talk about my experience in the cannabis industry. And something that is basically universal to any LGBTQ person is that at one time you had thoughts and feelings on the inside that you didn't express to the outside for various reasons. And oftentimes it's because of an obviously hostile environment around you, whether that's your family, your friends, your church, your school, the culture around you. You know that you shouldn't say anything. So while we've made a lot of progress in these areas, a lot of people still do come from families that are against it, and it's very difficult to even just get started in this world as somebody that feels this way, because you're grappling with things on the inside that are realities to you that people on the outside are saying are wrong, are choices, and just get over it, essentially, if that's how you feel. So even once you overcome that and you come out of the closet, so to speak, and you are more fully embodying who you really are, you're still going to face challenges. You still face uncertainties. In the case of work environments, there's often a question of whether and how much of your own personality and who you are to reveal, because you fear being discriminated against. And sometimes there's adequate reason. Sometimes there are people that will say nasty remarks or keep you from advancing your career. But a lot of times it's in your head. You're expecting people to be that way because people who were important to you when you were young were that way. So say your parents or your extended family was very anti-gay and you struggled with that and finally came out. Well, you got a bad reaction, right? Well, you're basically going to be expecting that to happen again and again, whether it does or not. And most of the time it doesn't happen. So in my experience in the cannabis industry, and maybe I got lucky as well with the companies I've landed with, for the most part, despite my worries, it's been a good experience, and I've been welcomed in the companies and in the areas where I have been. But that may not always be the case. So that being said, if somebody does have something negative to say about you being LGBTQ in the workplace, you absolutely have the right to tell them, fuck you, fuck off. I'm not talking about that. It's none of your goddamn business. Absolutely. Any of those things, any variations on that are absolutely acceptable if somebody is giving you a hard time over being LGBTQ in the workplace. Because you know what? If they want to complain about that and escalate that to HR or up the chain, it's just going to look really bad for them. Because why did I have to tell you to fuck off? All right, let's talk about it. So in my experience, there's been some interest in welcoming LGBTQ members to the company or to the industry, but there is also a lot of uncertainty and certainly discrimination out there. So again, maybe I've been mostly lucky in my experiences, but I can tell you that there is a lack of LGBTQ representation in the cannabis industry at all levels. I have some data to look at in a moment, but we all know it because we experience it. Oftentimes, either we are the only gay person or we feel like we're the only gay person in a company of a given size. And with this air of uncertainty of will I be accepted, will I be discriminated against if I come out, a lot of people choose to just kind of keep to themselves, definitely not advertise that they're gay, maybe even cover it up to some extent or go to lengths to kind of avoid the conversation coming up. And so then they don't, even if there are multiple gay people in one company, they don't quite connect. And so there are ways to do that and to help to facilitate gay people within a company or within the industry to connect, but there's a lot more work that we need to do to really get that done. And if there's any other successful LGBTQ members in the cannabis industry, which I know there are many, we need to be voices of encouragement to our younger LGBTQ members. We need to encourage them. We need to support them. Honestly, we need to figure out how to get together more. I'm trying to find organizations where LGBTQ members in the cannabis industry come together and fellowship together, just discuss what it's like. I don't know, we just need to connect more. And maybe I'm not looking in the right places, and I'd like to see more of this, but if anybody, again, knows of any LGBTQ cannabis communities or groups that are active, let me know. I'm going to show you at the end of a few that I've come across. Let me know if there's some that I missed. So let's get into some statistics. Oregon did a really nice report here that shows in this figure current marijuana use among Oregon adults by select demographic characteristics, 2014-15 combined. So in Oregon, of all respondents, 11% used cannabis or admitted to using cannabis in the past 30 days. But 33% of LGBTQ members used cannabis in the past 30 days. So that's a 3 times enrichment of LGBTQ users versus the population, and a full third of the LGBTQ population using cannabis in the past 30 days in Oregon, back in 2014-15. I mean, we're using cannabis more than pretty much any other group. And why is that? I don't know. Like, there could be a lot of reasons. Like, let's unpack that for a second. I mean, it was mentioned as a treatment for AIDS symptoms. Now, fewer people are actually suffering from AIDS itself, having better HIV treatments and being able to keep those viral loads low. But could LGBT people still be using cannabis for medicinal uses more than the general population? Could it be that because of issues associated with being LGBTQ in an unsupporting environment and other childhood neglect and abusive situations, that LGBTQ people are enriched in experiencing childhood abuse and neglect? Could that be driving more self-medication for things like that? I don't know. I'd be really interested to know what's behind this. But the bottom line is LGBTQ people are huge participants in the cannabis industry as consumers. Boom, right there, 33% of them at a 3 times rate versus the general population. Let's go through a few more of these statistics in this report because I thought they were kind of interesting. This figure 15, current marijuana use among Oregon adults by race and ethnicity, was an interesting statistic because it basically didn't break out things very much or very well. So all adults combined, overall 12% used cannabis in the past 30 days, which I don't know why that's different from the 11% question. Maybe because when they're looking at race or other select groups, the numbers just kind of get put together differently. But ultimately, so white people apparently use marijuana at the rate of all adults combined. African Americans, slightly higher rate, although look at these error bars. These are crazy. I don't know how they're even saying anything at all. So I think that's why this graph is very limited in information and confusing. Look at these error bars. Huge. I mean, everything's the same number, actually, statistically speaking, or could be. So that means these results are not very meaningful. And in Oregon, honestly, there's not very many minorities. It's mostly white people. And so their numbers are probably very small. And so the statistics are very weak. So we'll leave that at that. This is the last statistic I kind of wanted to go through. Figure 16, frequency of marijuana use among Oregon adults who currently use marijuana, 2014 and 2015. I'm just going to focus on 2015. So those are the orange rectangles. And basically they're saying, if you smoked in the past 30 days, how many of those days did you smoke or consume? Right? So did you just get together with some friends on one Saturday and eat an edible and that was it for the whole month? Did you do that every weekend, 2 to 3 days? Did you do it a couple times a week? All the way up to you consumed all 30 days. What I would like to make note of is that 20 to 29 days, 19%, all 30 days, 36%. So over a third of people in Oregon who used cannabis in the past 30 days used it every day. And if you go up to somebody and you ask them, did you use cannabis in the past 30 days? There's more than a 50% chance that they used it at least 2/3 of those days, 20 out of 30, all the way up to every day. So out of every 2 cannabis users, one of them uses nearly every day or every day. Incredible. Just very interesting statistic. So let's move on to another report. This report is published by Vankst, which is a cannabis recruiting firm out of Colorado. Great company, great people. They do great work, and this is a really interesting report that they put out, and I'm really pleased with them for creating and putting out this report. You can find it and read it on your own. There's some good information in there, but let's just jump down to these graphs and kind of talk about them. So this first graph, overall diversity. The question is, how would you characterize the makeup of your company's employees overall? And the answers were strongly lacking diversity, somewhat lacking diversity, somewhat diverse, and strongly diverse. Key takeaway, there's basically 2 positive and 2 negative categories. That is, fewer than 30% of the survey participants said that their company overall was somewhat or strongly lacking in diversity. 70+% of respondents said that their companies were somewhat or strongly diverse. So, I mean, off the bat, I'd say that's an encouraging statistic. That's encouraging to know that many people who work within the industry feel that they're working at companies that are at least somewhat diverse. Now, that said, there's still a lot of work to be done if 30% feel like they're lacking in diversity. The next question that this Vankst sent out in their survey was just, do you identify as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community? And this is specific to cannabis industry participants. Yes, no, or choose not to answer. So we'll forget no and choose not to answer. Let's just look at yes. Almost 14% said yes. In the overall population, depending on where you look, you see 7 to 10% of people in the overall population are LGBTQ. 14% of cannabis industry members are LGBTQ. That seems encouraging, right, on the face of it, right? That's an overrepresentation, it seems like. But what you need to remember is a few things. One is that millennials and Generation Z are much more likely to be LGBTQ than older generations, and they're also much more likely to be working in the cannabis industry than older generations. So there's going to be an enrichment there. But also remember that in Oregon, 33% of LGBTQ people consumed cannabis in the past 30 days. So that means they have a consumer participation rate of 33%, but according to this report, an industry participation rate, we're actually working in the industry, of only 14%. So that's actually a disparity. And that being said, this could be mostly low-level employees and temporary employees, and who knows? This doesn't do anything to tell us about whether LGBTQ are included in management, ownership, and so forth. And with that being said, there are no statistics at this point that I know of that are specific to the cannabis industry relating to LGBTQ participation or inclusion at different levels of a company. But at companies overall, let's just look at LGBTQ men by management level. Only about 2 to 3% of employees are LGBTQ. And if you look at, the higher up you go, the fewer. Sort of. With the men, it's kind of flat across, isn't it? But only a 3% representation and 7 to 10% in the overall population. And of course, as usual, women have an even harder time than men in this arena. Even though we're talking about LGBTQ men and women, the women still struggle a bit more, following known existing trends in our society at large. So, that being said, it appears that there's a lot of work to do to increase LGBTQ representation in management, ownership, and higher levels of companies in general and in the cannabis industry specifically. So with that, go ahead and read the rest of this report from Vangst. It's a very nice report. I'm going to run through just a few organizations right now that I've kind of come across that are specific to LGBTQ people in the cannabis industry. First up here is queercannabis.club. I found their Instagram page. They were in this Forbes article, but then there's only 6 posts. So I don't really know what's going on with them, if they're still around or if they have another website, but I followed them, and I hope that, followed by Dr. Toll here. I followed them, and I hope to see if they're still active or what's going on. Next up is Proud Mary. This is another cannabis networking, advocacy, and education group for LGBTQ members. I've also reached out to them, hoping to join. I don't see any upcoming networking events, so I hope to see some soon. I'd love to join and participate. The Full Spectrum Network was also listed as a LGBTQ and allied cannabis industry community. They also don't have any upcoming events planned, and so I hope to see some events planned here too. Again, I'd love to participate, but everybody please check them out, because the more of us that at least start acknowledging that we're interested and we're here, then maybe we can put together networking events and actually get together and get to know each other better and support each other better as a community. And then finally, I'll draw attention to Marijuana Matters. This is a social equity organization focused on minorities, and also it is founded by an LGBTQ person, I believe, if I'm understanding that correctly, but this is also another advocacy group that you can check out and try to get involved in. So that all being said, I really appreciate you all listening to this podcast today. This is a very important topic. It's one where we're seeing conversations develop and begin, but we still need more meaningful conversations. We need to come to the table and really figure out what are active things that we can do to encourage more participation from more diverse people, whether that be minorities or LGBTQ members or other people as well. So I hope that you all are more inspired to get involved with social equity and with advocacy surrounding diversity and inclusion in cannabis. And again, thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you for listening to Concentrates with Dr. T. Please tune in next time and follow me on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thanks again.